Hello, everyone. It's so good to see your faces. I'm Diedre Tanenberg, and I'm in the homeland of coastal Mawak. I work for the San Francisco Department of Environment, Public Affairs, Assistant Coordinator. I'm going to hand it off to JJ.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Bechhold Jr., and I am on the Arapaho, Ute, Comanche, and many other lands. I work for UTIERA. It's an organization with the goal for educating people about the environment in ASL, and I also work on a farm.
All right. I'm Sachiko. SKO is my abbreviation, and I'm in the Pisgah OA, and it's really more about, it's in the Baltimore, Maryland area is where it's at. And I founded a nonprofit organization called Core That. This is the name, this is a sign, and it's really the goals for the deaf community to get outdoors. We provide environmental information, recreation, and job development.
And hello, I am Sarah Young Bear-Brown. I am from the Meskwaki Nation tribe. And I'm an Indigenous woman. I am working on activism and support. I've worked on standing rock and water conservation projects.
So thank you. All of us have some roles that we do with the goal of environmental or eco-activism. And so this conversation we're having is, what is eco-activism? It's a term that we may be aware of, we may be teaching the community about, and we're going to be talking about why should deaf people be involved in this conversation. The time is now to learn more today with all of us. So I wanted to see if someone wanted to offer up and share what they think eco-activism is.
Sure, I'll do that. A lot of people recognize the part eco, right? It's environmental or related to the environment. And then they see the word activism, right? Getting involved, doing something about a cause. But a lot of people misunderstand eco-activism because a lot of people think about, what exactly does that mean, eco-activism? We are out on the beach, we're picking up trash, simple things like that. But there's a lot more to it. Eco is recognizing the environmental activism, of course, but that there is environmentalism. That is a word that's involved as well. I'm curious actually what you guys think that means.
Yeah. So environmentalism, so it's any person who advocates for the protection of the environment. So it could be air, it could be water, it could be land, it could be plants, animals, and the like, and people from pollution that's out there. And pollution, we talk about the effects that they have, the misuse, and the damage that's caused by human activity. In other terms, we need to be aware of this.
Yes, in my opinion, environmentalism, that word, has been around for a very long time, for decades. And this came up first with concerns over the climate change. And so that concept was built around that. And now it's a little bit maybe outdated because today we're focusing more on eco-activism because, the time we're recognizing that we need to do more and we have a lot of issues we need to confront. in 2020, we wonder how long is this earth going to be around. We're in 2021 now. We're, running out of resources and there's a lot of destruction. So the time is now. So environmentalism has really shifted into eco-activism because this is much more of an active role we need to take now. Environmentalism is
eco-activism as well.
Is eco-activism. Yes, you can't disconnect them. So environmentalism is part of eco-activism, and we're looking at how the community can get involved. And there are many, many issues coming up related to the environment and more coming up as well. So I feel like that's more of the appropriate word today.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask everyone related to the idea of activism, how can one of us be involved and what can we do? Can anyone give some examples of the things that we can do? Yeah, I could share my experiences as an activist. In 2015, I was involved in DAPL. It's the Dakota CSS pipelines. And so we did that in North Dakota. This is the sign for Standing Rock. And I was involved with a lot of deaf people. I got out there and there was 150 deaf people plus volunteers plus interpreters. And we just got together in Oklahoma and we were involved in the front lines, telling them to stop the pipelines on our sacred land. And we made sure to let them know that we wanted this to stop. And we've been working hard on this. Of course, we're still battling this. When Trump was in power, he said he could go ahead and let the pipelines.
Oh, the video froze a little. Okay.
Oh, well, recently, yeah. So with pipelines, he said he would let them proceed. But with Biden, he gave a keynote XL, finally putting a stop to it, but hasn't recognized the third line and the North Dakota pipeline. So in Minnesota, we're still fighting over there, and the Indigenous people are fighting. And we are, plus a lot of you out there are as well. This is our sacred land. This is our earth. And our earth is sick now. And if everything is gone, we're going to die too. We have to think about that. And we can make a difference by helping Mother Earth more. We have to pay attention to Mother Earth more and what the needs are.
Absolutely. I think a big part of that is education. So thank you so much for being involved in this conversation so that we can promote this activism and get people out on the front lines for the preservation. And I know you risked a lot to do that, so I really respect that.
Yeah, thank you.
So are there other forms of activism that I'm seeing? Education, giving people resources and tools that they can better use to understand what they can actually do, what the solutions are out there that they can be involved in so that people know that they can make a difference. We talk to people about waste reduction, reducing fossil fuels. And we need to stop using all of these fossil fuels because we've depended on them for a long time. And we have renewable resources now. We have other ways of charging things that don't require the fossil fuels that we're taking. So there are things out there that we can shift our focus on that are more sustainable. And I'm a big advocate of those kind of changes. So with the government policy, we're really trying to promote more of these ideas of health and community health for everybody. And having access just to clean water and air as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to let you know that in Fair Fall, the earth has made millions a year, and we the people, we've used so much, and we're going to run out of everything because we keep using everything. And in 50 or 60 years, we may be all out of it. So we have to be wise. We really have to think of turning off our lights, thinking about how we're using energy in our houses with fossil fuels. There's so many things that we can do to help reduce the use of fossil fuels.
Absolutely. And something I find fascinating is that we can do things to save and conserve our nature, because nature has is in chaos right now, and we have caused this. So now it's time to kind of back up and think about what we've done, our tendencies, our diets, how we interact with the environment.
To clean up our mess, to think about the audience and how hearing people can be involved. And if we're not providing access in American Sign Language, the question is, do a lot of interpreters even know about eco-activism? There's not a lot of exposure. So I definitely encourage that. And I also want to expose the deaf audience with different conservation routes, different projects. For example, there's one trail that we go on. It's in the woods, and we always walk on there. And I asked them, I said, what is this trail for? Why don't they just get rid of that? Why don't we just walk around on the ground? And they have to think about it. They don't know. And they say, well, maybe we don't want to damage the flowers. Maybe we're conserving the land. And I say, that's right. And it's important that you think we have this one trail so we don't walk all over the other grounds. And people are walking on the trail, then especially when they're walking and things get on their boots or their shoes, it can go into other places and it would be considered an invasive plant. And it would be the human's fault for doing that. So we definitely have to clean our shoes. We have to think about these things before we go to another park or a nature hike, because we don't want to bring these plants around with us and spread species that aren't supposed to be in one other place or another. So it's definitely considered restorative. We also think about soil erosion and how that is caused, and it's because of the rainfalls and the way that it's draining from the soil. The soil is much more porous, so we think about how we can conserve that and build different types of rocks. There's zuni bowls that we can build, and so we form the rocks like a bowl, and once the water flows over them, they trickle down, and that's one way that we can control water. And that way the soil has more time to get stronger, trees have more time to root, and that kind of information we want to expose people to. I think it's extremely important to expose it to the younger generation so they know how they can get involved. So that's the kind of activism I do.
That's great. And, hands-on experience, that's one of the best ways to learn. Students are so curious. They like to ask questions, and that's really how we can kind of rope them in and get their minds thinking critically about these things. And one of the important things that we're developing for the climate, that, they always have questions about these kinds of things. So they're always wondering what we can do. They're always asking questions. And so I really suggest that and challenge everybody to go ahead and ask questions. Think about what steps you can take, how you can start, and just the chain of how one thing affects another thing. You get a water cup and you throw it out and it might end up in our water, right? In our waterways. So it's a chain reaction. And so that's where it ends up. It's a circle of life. So you've got to think of where everything is going to land afterwards. So, and I really encourage people to talk, to have these conversations, to read. Indigenous people already know all the answers to these things. They've known these things. They've been preaching these things for such a long time, and no one has been listening to them. White people have just, taken advantage of whatever they want to use that benefits them and goes on their way. But these Indigenous people have learned about the land because they have been taking care of the land for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And then white people just came and colonized it and destroyed everything. So now we're down to decades, looking at decades as opposed to thousands and hundreds of years. And by 2050, 2060, and on, we're getting closer and closer to this. We're getting decades closer to this end point. And we have to find the solutions and the answers. And we've got to listen to the Indigenous populations because they have the answers. They have the solutions to these problems.
So they have TEK. So it's the tribal knowledge of how you work with the land. The natives already know all the information, and they're not going to openly share that information to everyone. You have to earn their respect. we fucked up. We've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and how we can fix it is by listening to Indigenous people. We give them respect, they'll give us respect, and they'll be better off. And this is for our future. We have a bright future ahead, but if we're thinking about this dystopian society with running out of water and electricity, and we're thinking just it's going to be done, it's not. So if you think about solar punk, right? We think about all the power and electricity that can be used. We can use solar in the future. We can make it. We can achieve what we need to. We can transform the world. It can be a green, safe world in the future. So we got to think about what it looks like. So I encourage you to check it out. It's amazing. When I saw it, it's so uplifting. And the thing is, we got to read and learn, and one thing will lead to another.
And we have to recognize where our privilege is as white people.
Exactly.
Because we have so much privilege, and how can we shift this conversation, and really introspect, look at ourselves, and, as deaf people, how can we change the conversation and be the first to know what to do? So we need to push this nonprofit work for these organizations and invite people in and say, hey, we have a seat at the table. We have this conversation as well. And we're going to have ideas as well to help, that everybody can be involved. So it's not just, it's not all doom and gloom. There are solutions. We just need to have these conversations. So the opportunity to make amends and to change our habits, make changes. So, Sarah,
Biden has the American insulin. So we go back to the climate change, the peace accord, and we've been moving towards that. And actually, all these talks have been happening. We're seeing this actually come into action. So the question is, how do we get our deaf community involved? How do we do that more? So Sarah, do you have any thoughts? Yeah, in 2015, I noticed that there were a lot of Indigenous people fighting for DAPL. And I noticed that, and I saw in the news in the deaf community, there was nothing about it. And I'd go out to my friends who were deaf and I said, did you know about this? This is going on. And no one knew. So I decided to make some vlogs, and I put out videos, and I was letting the media know that this is going on. And we were talking about what the work that we were doing. And I said, this is happening. DAPL is happening. We're fighting the pipes that are going down the pipelines. And I made vlogs consistently. I tried to keep myself a front in the media just to make sure that information was out there.
They're wonderful vlogs.
Yeah. And I want to take the opportunity to share with you an Indigenous story that I have. And I noticed that whenever people get sick, right? There's people that get sick, they get fevers. Of course, our bodies fight infections with fevers, right? And that's what happens. You see global warming's happening with our earth, right? It's fighting an infection. Mm-hmm. So we have got to help heal Mother Earth. And the ways we do that is by action. We can't sit back and just talk about what we're going to do. We have to actually do something.
Definitely. Action is... There's a range. There's a range. There's politics, all the way to just the small things that we can do in our everyday life, like recycling, like JJ was talking about. Just these little actions that we can take are super important because they have an impact, and we can expand on those. If we understand what's going on in our environment and how everything is connected, if we get people's attention, we can expose them to more information. And if we get the deaf people involved, I believe we could do that. I'm hoping there's curriculum maybe in schools that can teach people about the earth. We just had Earth Day recently in April, and have a different kind of event, maybe just an hour of lights off, just to show people this exposure of these little things we can do. And environmental awareness, these things are important. The action versus awareness is important. And, it's sad today with technology. I mean, yes, technology helps us so much with communication and whatnot. But now I've noticed that more and more people are just completely obsessed with their technology and it's always on at their home, right? And they're never out and enjoying nature. So I really want, that's a concern, a growing concern for me. So with the impact of technology, people are staying home more and more. And I'm wondering where are deaf people getting their information? It's through technology, right? So Sarah has these wonderful vlogs, as does JJ with Utiera. And there's all these events happening. And I think it's beautiful. This is how we get people this information and get them involved at this point. And remember, people can Google things like if they're curious or, you talk to your best friend like, hey, have you seen this? If you notice something, go ahead and get your conversations going with your friends. And then talk about how you guys could get involved. I know if you have kids, think about what they can do, talk to them about it openly and about how to, preserve our precious nature.
Yeah, we're big on going outside. We go hiking. And I do want to, whenever I hike now, especially now that I understand so much more about climate change and the earth, I want to know whose land we're walking on. What happened before I got to that point where I was walking on? So I enjoy recreationally that spot, but I want to know what took place before I ended up getting there. And that loss of biodiversity is happening. And biodiversity, I mean, we have many different kinds of species and plants that are all interconnected in our biosphere with each other just to survive, because without that biodiversity, we're not going to survive. And so I'm teaching my kids. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I said, come on, play outside. Let's go hiking. Let's look, let's touch. And of course, it's important not to touch the poison oak. We try to avoid that. So we got to recognize which is which. But you won't know until you actually learn. And I just wanted to make a quick statement. I was 7 years old and I got poison oak from head to toe. So that was a lesson learned. So I know how to identify poison oak, but it's these courses. I just found out there's these new online climate school that they have with a mission to get 100 million people working on climate solutions. And they want to do it by 2030. So how many years is that from now?
Oh, wow. That's 9 years. Yeah.
9 years from now. Right. The solutions need to be made now. 100 million people can come up with a solution. So there's climate school, and it's the same thing as Diedre is doing now. And we want more deaf people involved. So aggressively and being very ambitious about contacting them and just saying, hey, we have a solution ready. And we got to start now. So I'm seeing recently they did it was a film festival that they just did, an event where they taught the organizers how to caption their films just to make sure that there was a American Sign Language interpreter there. We need more people like that, more people reaching out, more people getting the resources available and up and ready.
Yep, I agree. And you mentioned before, the privilege and noticing the different communities. I was thinking about access to the outdoors, right? So I'm a woman of color, and I'm very lucky that my parents encouraged me to play outside and explore and be curious. And, so that's something I always did. I always understood nature and played with it. And I was curious and I would ask questions like, where is that from? So I had access. But there are other people who, don't really have access to being outside in nature very much. So we need to make sure that these tools are provided for everybody, for the Indigenous people, for the deaf community, for BIPOC, that they have access to nature. And that can be a challenge. But I think we can succeed if more people like us are activating and exposing everybody the way we want to.
I completely agree. Environmental racism is a real thing. A lot of communities have food deserts where there's no food, and a lot of poor people live in those communities and they don't have access to food. It's just junk food or processed foods that are accessible. There's no natural green spaces that they can access in the communities. A lot of them are in cities. And one of the reasons why inner city kids have a high percentage of risk and other things, it's exactly because of that. I was going to say something else, but I completely forgot.
No,
I would recommend to start small, planting trees in a yard, things like that. You can just start with farming, and you could have a garden, and you can just teach people how to harvest and plant seeds. You can go to your local market, your farmer's market, and you can see what you can do, and you could find food from there and buy and support your local farmers. There's so many things that you can start to see small businesses do. And this starts at going to farmers markets and different things like that. But there's a lot of things you can do. If you think that there's nothing you can do, there's always something you can do. So just start small. That's the key. And it takes time, just one step at a time.
Yeah. So your choices for where you buy anything, I mean, just think about, where did it come from? Where is it going? Just stopping to think about these things, learning that some companies out there, especially I know of one deaf-owned business in San Francisco that was just set up. It's a clothing line. It's 100% sustainable material. So we have to think more about where everything comes and goes. And we're seeing more and more businesses that value sustainability come up. So I think that's important.
Oh, I just thought of two things that I wanted to add to Sachiko. The community, when we're talking about access, there's a lot of organizations out there who already have a mission towards accessibility. So we don't have to take it on all ourselves. We could partner with those organizations. We can match funding or partner with and make sure we're using each other's resources. And yeah, we can get more done.
I know we're almost out of time, but I'm just thinking about all of these things. So I want to add one more food for thought, because I've just been thinking as we go.
Yeah, I definitely want to add one thing that I think is extremely important. It's the law of ecology. And so there's no away. A lot of people, it's such a bad habit. They're throwing away. They're throwing things. Things are broken. They're broken down. They're no good. They'll just throw it away. But where does it go? And I want to ask that question to all of you. Every time you throw something away, think, where does it go? There's no away. So if we bring it back and we close a loop, there's a lot of loops that are out there that are all broken, and it becomes linear loops. And the result is there's pollution everywhere. And so we really have to think about that. That's one big key point that I wanted to leave with you.
So if you want to learn more, please contact any of us. We would be happy to continue this conversation. I know 30 minutes is not a whole lot of time. We definitely want more. So JJ, if you want to expand more on that, for people that in the deaf community, for leaders to come together for this conversation and start this process, when and where, what can we do for virtual learning? So if you want to become a part of it, please do contact us. Feel free. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you, Convo, for hosting this and for this discussion. We thank you so much. We're so grateful.
Yes, thank you for recognizing us. Thank you for allowing us to speak.
Do you want to close?
We are all Earth guardians. So please think about Mother Earth. She gives us sustainability, food, water. So now it's time for us to give back. And the time to do it is now. Thank you.